Good morning. It's Tuesday, May 14th, 2024. This is Up North News Radio. I'm Pat Kreitlow. It is 6:01. Our show will get started at 6:06 all across the Civic Media Radio Network. We are going to be talking about what's happening in the state capitol today, which does involve legislators coming into the Capitol. It does not appear to involve doing anything productive about the money that's being blocked for contaminated water in Wisconsin. We'll explain. Sharita Booker will be here to tell us what's popular on the Up North News social media sites. Christina Laurie will be here to talk about the Up North News daily newsletter. In our second hour, Hans Breitenmoser will help us review column A and column B when it comes to the Farm Bill. A very important bill for farmers, consumers, producers, and so forth. It's more than 6 months overdue. It's got to get done. And column A are all the things that Senate Democrats want to do with the Farm Bill to help grow markets for farmers, and, keep them healthy. Column B is what House Republicans want with the Farm Bill, which involves a whole lot of cutting, slashing, and burning. We'll see if there's any matchy-matchy in there between the two columns at all. Chad Holmes will join us as well. Brittany Merlot's forecast, Greg Bach, and so much more along the way. We will see you in 3.5 minutes, if I can math correctly, on the Civic Media Radio Network. All right, boys and girls, here we go.
All across Wisconsin from Civic Media, this is Up North News Radio. Now, live from our Lake Wissota studio, here's the founding editor of Up North News, Pat Brightlow.
Well, hey there, Wisconsin. Good morning. It is 6:06 on this Tuesday morning, May 14th, 2024. Another beautiful day to have you here up north. Live from Lake Wissota, from wherever you're listening, across the Civic Media Radio Network or through the Civic Media app, on social media or by podcast. I've got a question for you. Do you realize that folks saying build that wall have been wrong all along, but not entirely? We need to build the wall with Canada and this wildfire smoke. We need to build a wall. It is so hazy up here and smoky, and I feel like I haven't even really slept, even though I slept like a baby, but it's, your eyes can't totally wake up. It's just kind of like, it's that kind of a haze, and it looks like it's going to be a summer thing again. We'll talk about that and so much more during the program today. Again, nice to have you along. You can reach us throughout the course of the show at 855-75-CIVIC. Again, 855-75-CIVIC. You can call that number. You can also send text messages to that number or use the Civic Media app. The Standells had a song in the late 60s called Love That Dirty Water. We won't play it today, but I have a feeling it's going to come into use repeatedly here over time, because it appears that the Republican legislators do love that dirty water in Wisconsin. They're coming to the state capitol today, but they are not coming to release the $125 million that they have already approved to clean PFAS industrial chemicals out of Wisconsin drinking water. Instead, they're coming down to pull a political stunt and threaten to do veto overrides, even though they don't have the votes to override any of Governor Evers' vetoes. We'll talk about that. Sharita Booker will be here, our social media manager, to talk about what has been popular on the Up North News social media platforms. Christina Laurie will be here to talk about the daily newsletter. Then in our second hour, Hans Breitenmoser, a friend of ours, a dairy farmer from Merrill area up in Lincoln County. We talk every couple of weeks or so about the farm economy, and today we're going to do a little column A, column B. In column A are the things that Senate Democrats say they want in a new farm bill. In column B are the things House Republicans say they want. We'll look to see where there is there even a Venn diagram? Or are we just talking two complete circles that don't intersect? And what does that mean for farmers, producers, consumers, export markets, and so much more for the rural economy in Wisconsin? It's a very important thing. And yet there does not appear to be a lot of progress involved, because House Republicans want to do nothing but slash and burn the things that are in the Farm Bill. So all that and more coming up along the way. First, let's look at some temperatures around the state at 6 a.m. I guess from what Brittany said yesterday came to fruition, that about the southern 2/3 of Wisconsin had a rather cloudy, kind of dreary day yesterday, and up here it was sunny and gorgeous. I've got the top down on the Jeep, was driving around running errands. Couldn't have asked for a better day. Well, yeah, I could have. There was all that haze. Up here right now in Lake Wissota, we've got 45 degrees. Hayward's at 36, Park Falls 40, Wausau 43 degrees right now, Green Bay 53. La Crosse also reporting 53 degrees. It's 46 in Rapids, 49 in Oshkosh. Madison's at 51. And in the quaint little Milwaukee area suburb of Waukesha, it's 46 degrees, where in a small room in a downtown radio studio, we find Greg Bach standing by to bring quality programming to another pair of Civic Media radio programs. That Up North News thing at 6 a.m., the Matt and Aaron Air thing at 10 a.m. The man is just dripping with quality radio programming. Mr. Bach, good morning.
I'm actually dripping with coffee, because for the second time in a week, I spilled coffee all over myself.
No! What happened?
So last week, we were here and we were just about to get the show ready, and I realized that my smartwatch was 10 seconds behind our radio clock. And when I walked in the room, I had a cup of coffee in my hand and my water in the other hand, and it was like 5:59:58, and I'm like, oh no. and I go reach down, I just spill coffee everywhere. That isn't a piece of very expensive equipment.
Not at all. No.
And so there was that, and that was fun to clean up while you were talking and trying to look professional.
Mhm.
And then this morning I had a cold coffee drink that was in a can, like a soda can, and I shook it up because I'm like, oh, I want to shake it up, make sure it's nice and everything. I didn't think it was carbonated. When I opened it, it just started like a volcano. And what was funny is that like I think a lot of people would go like, oh my God, no. I looked at it and I'm like, of course.
Yes. when you are just defeated, you go, yeah, sure, why not? Go for it. Oh,
yeah.
Goodness.
But I mean, you know what? Life is fine. I've got a change of clothes. I'm gonna be fine. But I'm just like, good morning, everybody. Who needs coffee when you can just pour coffee on
you
yourself?
can wear it. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no
I'm
way. You can
a fashionable boy.
You can have it traditionally, you know,
Yeah,
in a cup. There's coffee enemas. This is kind of a good midpoint between those things. It's just wear it, just slather it on you at some point. You know,
Pat, I don't do that whole drinking coffee thing. That's for the plebes.
I'm much more topical. You know,
I let it soak into my body via a gross T-shirt now.
kind of, it's caffeine osmosis. And what is today's T-shirt or the backup T-shirt, as the case may be?
Well, this is the one I'm wearing right now that has the coffee. And I was like, oh, it'll dry, but it dried into a nice brown stain. So, this is a Lakefront Brewery T-shirt, and it's got the original River West Stein logo on it. This is like a throwback vintage T-shirt. So I'm going there tonight to do the drag bingo show. And that'll be very, very fun.
Okay.
And we'll have a good time. So if you're in the Milwaukee area and you want to have some fun times, come on down. 7:00, free.
Very good.
Sorry, I didn't mean to turn this into an advert.
Nope, that's fine. That's always good. Did you, in fact, I asked you over chat just before the show, were you able to get the little play-by-play cut from the Brewers? Because I'll jump right into sports here. And if so, because I when I went to bed, again, I don't know if it's the smoke or what, but it was 5-0. Brewers were losing to Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
And I want to say it was like the 6th or 7th inning maybe. And I was just like, no, I can't stay up. And come to find out that, again, the Brewers were down 5-0. So here's what I missed. Here's what a lot of you missed. It's the 8th inning now. It's the bottom of the 8th. The Brewers have the bases loaded. They're down 7-2 to the Pirates at this point. Jake Bauers steps up to the plate and does this. He stood there silently for a while.
What the heck? Okay. See, this is what I don't like about this website is it automatically mutes the audio. So here we go. So in the 8th inning, he did something very, very fun that has to do with baseball. I promise. Sorry, boring. Ooh, sports.
And the bases are loaded for Jake Bauers. The 3-2 delivery. High drive, deep right field. Back goes Reynolds. Grand slam. The Brewers.
Jake Bauers makes it a 1-run game, 7-6 in the bottom of the 8th, and the crowd goes wild. Those who weren't sleeping like some of us, they nearly came all the way back, but not quite. Ended up losing to the Pirates 8-6, but one exciting moment that we thought we would share there for you, especially since there's also some not so good news. Rhys Hoskins left the game after injuring his right hamstring while running to first base in the 2nd inning. Manager Pat Murphy said he'll undergo an MRI today. The Brewers, again, they're young. They're going to make some mistakes or at least have some shortcomings. In this case, it's what my wife loves to call abandonment issues. They don't strand the runners, they abandon them. The Brewers abandoned 2 men on base without scoring them in the 2nd inning, the 3rd inning, the 5th inning, the 6th inning. Starting pitcher Colin Ray struck out 5 and allowed 3 runs, 6 hits, 1 walk in 6 innings of work. Always nice to see the starting pitchers get through at least 6 innings there. Joe Ross will start for the Brewers this evening in Game 2 of the series. You can listen to the pregame starting at 6:05 on Civic Media stations in Richland Center, Racine, Kenosha, Oshkosh, and Park Falls. Then they will wrap up the series at midday tomorrow. So there's a little bit of sports from last night's Brewers game that we're all catching up on together. The big project around the Kreitlow household had been the garage thing, but now, Greg, I'm proud to say we have moved on to our next incidents of middle-aged couple goes into full home mode. I don't think you were part of this when we went to the Minnesota State Fair back last August. Most people will get, food, and they'll get all kinds of other trinkets and things. And then there's those people who you always wonder who stops at these vendor booths and gets like household items. Middle-aged couples like us who are walking out of the fair with like this really long metal pole with brush attachments and things. Well, so we thought, yeah, this looks good. This looks really promising. And I don't remember the brand name, so I'm not doing commercials or anything. So finally, over the weekend, Sherry's like, let's get that cleaning pole out. If you want the very definition of what makes for a happy married couple in middle age, it's watching their purchase of a state fair cleaning pole work its magic on getting stains off of household siding when you're going around the house. We were like taking turns. You attach the garden hose for it, and like we could reach way up into the peaks, and we could get some of the the mossy stuff off of the top of the siding. We were so happy. This is what brings us joy when the grandkids aren't here. Obviously, we love our family, but if they're not here, household cleaning.
They don't clean anything. So
that's true. They do. They make
folks, this is another reason why you should really pick up on the live stream, because if you could see the shining, bright smile and eyes of one Pat Kreitlow, he's so happy. And you know what? I'm here for it because I get it.
So proud of ourselves. Yes. Well, you have to remember that when we were very young, and I am not mechanically inclined at all, even less so back then. And we lived in apartments, and we would tell our young daughters if something broke, we'd say, well, the men will come fix it, meaning from the rental office or maintenance or whatever. Early on in being house owners, something broke, and Samantha says to us, when are the men come fix it? Like, nope, I'm the man now. I have to figure out how to fix it. We are the men. Sherry and I have become fixers, and it's been quite a journey. Great. And I love it. Wouldn't change it for the world.
That reminds me, I got to go to the hardware store and pick up a light switch today. Okay, thank you for the reminder.
There you go. It's all public service here. Let's take a break. We'll unpack the news in just a bit. Live from Lake Wissota on the Civic Media Radio Network. This is Up North News Radio. I'm Pat Kreitlow. This would be Spyro Gyra, the first top-selling, what you would call it, light jazz bands. And Jay Beckenstein is the saxophonist of the group that you'll hear in a couple of seconds here. And he turns 73 today. And this was one of their more popular songs, appropriately called Morning Dance, as we get going on this Tuesday morning. Here's a little bit of Jay. And we will note in a half hour in today's history lesson the passing of another modern-day saxophonist of note. David Sanborn passed away at the age of 78 over the weekend. We learned that late yesterday. Talk about that more coming up in a little while later this hour. Again, our phone number here is 855-75-CIVIC. What have we opened the door here for? Let's see, household gadgets that you've purchased and like to clean, or home maintenance projects that went really well or went really sideways that you want to tell us about, and famous coffee spills, from your life. So you can also talk about things in the news, and that's what we're going to get into next when I tell you that the Wisconsin legislature will be in session to a degree today. Legislators have decided to come to the Capitol, but not to do the thing that they should be doing, which is, just having the Joint Finance Committee release the money that they have already budgeted for cleaning PFAS, industrial chemicals, out of the water supply. No, instead, Republicans in the state Senate said they will gather today to vote to override some of Governor Tony Evers' vetoes, including his partial vetoes of a bill to fight PFAS pollution. Now, Republicans have a supermajority in the Senate. They have 22 of the 33 seats. So they do have the votes to override an Evers veto, but over in the Assembly, the Republicans do not have a supermajority. They would need to pick up 2 more seats, or have 2 Democrats not show up for some reason. That's why Democrats for months and months now have really kind of been on standby. They've had people nearby, the Capitol, in case Republicans, as has been done in other states, tried to pull a fast one and suddenly hold a veto override vote, which is immensely childish. But that's where we've been taken in our politics these days, that rather than simply do the right thing, we're playing political games. And that's what we're going to have at the Capitol today, would be the political games that are being played on these veto overrides, including for the PFAS money. And then after that, they'll be able to put in their campaign literature, hey, we tried, but that big bad governor had some partial vetoes in there to provide a little bit more flexibility, also take out the language that would have made it tougher for the DNR to enforce the actual polluters. And that's where we sit at this point. Sharita Booker is coming up to tell us about what is popular on social media in just a sec, but I just wanted to share the story about PFAS first, and also to tell you that the state Supreme Court did hear arguments yesterday on the whole notion of whether drop boxes should continue to stay banned. And according to Scott Bauer, writing for the Associated Press, the liberal justices who control the Wisconsin Supreme Court showed signs Monday of being willing to overturn a ruling that all but eliminated drop boxes in the swing state. Let's listen more now to my chat recently with Sharita Booker about social media posts at Up North News. And now let's talk to Sharita Booker, social media manager here at Up North News. Head to Up North News WI on social media on most channels to find more of what she's up to. And as we discovered last week when we were asking for the website to win those Brewers tickets, I can't tell you enough. Put the WI after the end of Up North News when you're searching for us. Sharita, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Pat. Good. How are you?
Oh, good. Thanks. Let's jump right into some of the posts from the past week or so that were clicked on, watched, shared the most. And we often start with a newsy one. And so why wouldn't we start with President Biden's visit Wednesday of last week to Sturtevant, to the Racine area, and talking about, what was originally planned for that site, but what now is going to go up on that site instead. Tell us more about last week's story for those who missed it and what folks had to say about it.
So there are some jobs heading our way, Wisconsin. Biden visited Racine County and announced a $3.3 billion Microsoft data center that will be on the grounds of what was supposed to be a massive Foxconn facility. Biden said the project will require about 2,300 union construction workers to build it and about 2,000 permanent employers to staff it. That had a lot of comments. Lana said, Foxconn was such a bust. I really hope something good comes of this. And Deidre said, did he forget jobs were lost due to a global pandemic? And he's doing his part to bring him back. So Deidre, wait on it.
And that's something we discussed in the wake of this visit, and probably has to come up a lot during the campaign here, is when we're talking about job growth. And Biden's job growth has been so much more than Trump's, and people say, oh well, yeah, because you're coming off the pandemic. No, that's accounting for recovering the jobs from the pandemic, and then job growth over and above it has been more than any president in our recent history. But obviously, there's still nearly 6 months of campaigning left to do for the Biden team to get that message out, if they want to be successful in it. All right, let's turn to education now. And always enjoy when we ask some open-ended questions and some fill in the blanks. And as part of Teacher Appreciation Week, you asked a question and got some responses. Tell folks about that.
Yep. So it's Teacher Appreciation Week. So one of the many questions we asked you this week was, what's one thing that could make public schools better? That post had almost 100 comments. And here's what Emily said. She gave numerous comments about that. She said, number one, funding public schools fully instead of starving them of funds for over a decade. Two, changing the reimbursement rate for special education students. Currently, about 33% is covered. Three, ensuring public funds go to public schools, talking about youth school vouchers. And four, respecting the teaching professional in general. I thought you made some really good points on that one.
Without a doubt. And of course, you had answers all over the place. You had Doug here saying defund them. All schools should be private. Meanwhile, you've got Peg saying fully fund our public schools. Joan saying separate church and state, stop privatizing public education. And again, you had just the whole range of things in there. I'm not seeing, thankfully, a lot of name calling. Sometimes these things can really deteriorate quickly, but a lot of people putting heartfelt remarks about the answer. And that's what we appreciate very much, is when we can make these posts more of a town square for folks to share their thoughts and maybe some solutions, rather than just the same old grousing. And then finally, something rather enjoyable here, not just any birthday, the birthday of a lifelong Wisconsin resident and a World War II veteran who is still with us, Sharita.
Yeah, so he just turned 107 years old. And check this out, he still drives and lives on his own. He celebrated his birthday with his friends and family like a true Wisconsinite, with a beer and a brat. That post had more than 1,000 likes on Facebook. Barb said, "Wow, amazing. I can't imagine how you have seen the world change in all those years. The happiest birthday wishes sent your way." Mary said, "Happy birthday to you young whippersnapper. Thank you for your service." And there were several more birthday wishes sent his way.
That's so
And that
great.
was all for
Sharita
the
Booker,
gentleman
thank
whose
you
name
very
is
much
Leonard.
with that. You can see more or hear more, read more of what she does on her social media posts over on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Christina Laurie tells us more about what's in the Up North News Daily newsletter next. You're Up North. Welcome back. It's time for the Uplift now with Christina Lord, who puts together our daily newsletter. Sign up for it on our website, upnorthnewswi.com. Click newsletter in the top banner. Become one of oodles of subscribers. I haven't even looked lately, Christina, what we're up to here, but you could be one of the many cool kids subscribed to the newsletter, which has to be
Pat, you love to tell the story of how few it started with. Now
six.
we're up to, we just passed 180,000.
180,000. That's outstanding. Folks who catch Pete Schwaba on this fine radio station for Nightlight at 7 o'clock know that I was on the show with him 2 weeks ago, and I really appreciated and wanted to make sure I passed on to you. He was absolutely gushing over the newsletter.
It's always great to hear.
I took the credit, but I mean, I may have mentioned you as well.
Thank you for sharing that. I mean, really, the best messages come from a few a day. I always get emails from different subscribers just saying that a story that we wrote about brought a smile to their face. And that's really our goal. Something that's distinct about our newsletter is that we start with a good story, as in a positive story, not just well written.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a nice way to start your morning because our email gets sent out at 5 a.m. So no matter what time you wake up, you can start not feeling like the world is falling apart.
That's a good way to kind of get the day going. See, and I get the old school version of that is every so often at Up North News, we kind of have something kind of akin to a pledge drive where we just invite people to, donate and support our work over at Up North News. And a lot of folks will do that online through the website, but some folks still like to write a check. And so they mail it to P.O. Box 27, Chippewa Falls, 54729. And I go down to the Chippewa Falls post office and pick them up. And we have such a collection of little Post-it notes and other little pieces of stationery or the back of, somebody's, junk mail. And just so they can write a little note about how much they either like the newsletter or something that we're doing. And I swear one of these days I've got to put all those in a frame just as a, little positive motivator, but we appreciate every note, every email.
Yeah. And it's a good reminder for anyone listening to this in your life, maybe take a minute today and send a nice email to anyone in your life, whether it's someone that reports to you at your work or a family member you haven't connected with in a while. Seems like we're always so busy, especially we're heading into the summer. It's like the few months of a year that we can actually enjoy the outdoors here in Wisconsin. But like to take a minute to share something good with someone rather than asking them for something or business that you have to conduct. It's always a nice change of pace.
It would be, wouldn't it? That's a good idea. Thank you. So we're getting at the end of the school year here, and there are all kinds of stories that can be done and all kinds of things that are happening. And this time around, you wanted to start us off with a story that's been in the newsletter about top student athletes for the University of Wisconsin, but as they are awarded by the Big Ten Conference. Tell us more about what the award is, and then we'll get into who got them.
So every year, the Big Ten, it gives an award called the Medal of Honor to two people from every single school who really exemplify student athletes. So they need to be equally versed in both academics and athletics. Sometimes the former gets lost.
Mm-hmm.
But so I just wanted to shout out Wisconsin's winners because they really are exemplary both on and off their respective fields or greens. You'll understand what I talk about when I introduce them. So the first is women's soccer forward, Emma Jaskiniak. I hope I'm pronouncing her last name correctly. She's a 4-year starter, midfielder of the year, second team All-American, currently ranked 5th on Wisconsin's all-time goals list. And then student-wise, she was also named to the academic All-Big Ten team. All 4 years she attended the UW. She actually already graduated with her degree in marketing last December. And she's already been drafted to the Utah Royals FC. So she's going to continue her athletic career. But it's nice to see a professional athlete actually graduate with their degree before turning pro. So congrats to Emma. And then on the men's side, men's golfer Cameron Huss won the award. He's a 2-time NCAA qualifier. He's actually heading to his third championship right now, 3-time golfer of the week, and a 2024 All Big Ten first team member. He also has plans of pursuing golf as a profession, but he is just finishing his bachelor's degree in consumer behavior and marketplace studies right now, and has also been academic All Big Ten 3 years in a row. And it's just a really nice honor. Only 2 students from every school are given this, so they're really the best of the best and deserve some extra accolades.
Well, yeah, this Big Ten Medal of Honor, has been around since, what's it say here, 1915. So, clearly you've got to be pretty worthy to be part of something that prestigious, especially when you consider how often we hear of some schools that are, just they're on Sports Center every night, but you're not necessarily sure what they're like as an academic institution. And I think the UW strikes a whole lot of people as being able to balance the best of both worlds, world-class academics and research, but also athletics like this that have been, part of our trademark for a century now.
And Pat, what I'm really interested in is that, of course, so next school year is going to be a little bit different. The Big Ten is going to have more of these awards to hand out since the conference is expanding.
To like 400 teams, it feels like it
the
includes
Big
schools
Ten,
on both coasts.
The Big Ten, aka Big 18.
Yeah.
But just recently, Wisconsin men's basketball, they released their in-conference schedule for next season, and it's interesting to see Washington and Oregon labeled as, conference games. Doesn't seem natural. But I was talking with my dad about this. I'm interested to see how this increased travel and increased far travel, hours away, different time zones away, will impact the student part of these student athletes' lives. Like, it can't be easy to take a road trip. Next season, Wisconsin's going to be playing both UCLA and USC on the road. That's a long flight, and it's already a lot of travel to keep up with academics and athletics. Interested to see what kind of tweaks they make along the way.
Yeah, because look, when they're doing these conference matchups, I guess the basketball teams will each play 20 conference games, 7 road games, 7 away games, and then some home and home series. And yeah, you've got these trips because now you've got, Rutgers, way out on the one coast, and now these West Coast teams that have come in. And I would hope it doesn't diminish the value of, again, some of these student athlete awards and things like that, because it's no longer, it hasn't been 10 schools for a while here, but there's just so much more there to, to make it a little bit tougher for somebody to stand out at any one of these schools when you've got so many schools that are in there now. But I guess this is the world we live in these days.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how long it is before there's another national realignment, because it just would make most sense just logistically to have schools grouped by region. It's just every area is off. At least Big Ten, all we have wrong is the number. Other conferences have wrong the geography.
Yes,
the Big East, and then schools are not in the East. It's like, come on.
No, they haven't been at all, because they're all trying to be just basically major leagues. The major leagues are the entire country, and now college sports is kind of going in that same direction. And while that's good for the money, and that's good for the exposure, but again, it gets away of what we were just talking about. An award like this started in 1915. When it was a big deal. It was probably a 3-day bus ride to get to Ohio State, from here way back when to do these kind of road trips. And so to be able to conduct your studies while still traveling the entire country, I'll tell you, whoever gets these awards a year from now, they will have really earned it.
Yeah. The ones this year earned it as well, but yes, things are going to get more intense. You mentioned Ohio State. That's something that's kind of lost, just shifting to the only athletic part of this conversation, is that with a larger conference, we're missing out on a lot of these long-standing rivalries. Because if you look at next season's schedule, Wisconsin only plays Ohio State once. Luckily, they play them at home. But most teams in the Big Ten, they're only going to have one game against. So it's either going to be home or away. There are only 3 teams that the Badgers will play both at the Kohl Center and on the road. I was glad to see Illinois on the list of that. I always think that's a very exciting game.
Of course you do.
Yeah, of course. But it just statistically it is as well. I
Mhm.
think the Badgers have the lead in the overall series, but Illinois is quickly catching up. They've had the edge the past few seasons here. Wisconsin's also going to play both Iowa and Minnesota home and away. So I'm glad to see those rivalries going, but it just is weird to only meet teams like Ohio State, Michigan, Michigan State, Indiana, Purdue only once. I mean, it just,
Mhm.
I feel bad for people, alumni of those schools who have come to live in Madison, hoping to see more of these matchups. They're going to become even more rare with the football schedule.
Yeah, I
Wisconsin
just
has to play Illinois next year, which is a bummer for Wisconsin because that's pretty much a guaranteed win.
Mhm. I just don't see this lasting. I don't see this as being sustainable. Now, save the tape. Maybe somebody can play this back in 5 years and tell me how wrong I was, but I just don't know. And I don't think they know either. I think anything is still possible with all these conferences. We're still getting used to the money that's in college sports now with these NIL deals, name, image, and licensing. The money that's getting paid to these student athletes. And of course the sports gambling, and I feel like it's not that long until the next scandal. Thankfully, the Shohei Ohtani one in Major League Baseball did not turn out to be, the worst case scenario. But I'm so worried that we're going to see something that it only takes one bad apple. And, I'm not saying that college sports is all pure and everything. I just don't necessarily want it to, run headlong into, having its reputation ruined either.
And Pat, I don't know if you feel this way or if this is just like, I would assume you feel this way as well. That like one of the best parts of college sports is that loyalty to your school. Like you feel really passionate about one school. You feel that connection to them. And that's just the bummer about all of this with the transfer portal, especially. Just seems like there's no loyalty anymore. And I know saying that, it sounds like I'm like a crotchety old person complaining, but that was the pure part. Your word was perfect for it, of college sports, that a player would arrive at a school as a freshman and then they'd graduate as a senior and turn into this awesome athlete. Maybe some of them didn't fare as well as, the coach had hoped when they drafted them as a freshman. But on the other side, some people came in as that scrawny walk-on and then become a star by senior year. And we're going to see that rarely happen anymore. And you also can't get as attached to these players because you're just getting them for one or at best 2 seasons. So I am interested to see how all of this changes. I mean, props at least that they're making changes because things always change. You have to go through some missteps to find what works and what ends up being awesome.
That much I agree on. I just don't know that this will be the final form that it takes, though. Again, only time is going to tell on that one. Christina Laurie, thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
You too, Pat.
And again, Christina Laurie puts together the newsletter with your news tips. You can send them to her at Christina Laurie at UpNorthNewsWI.com. And of course, you can sign up for the newsletter by heading to our website as well, UpNorthNewsWI.com, and click newsletter in the top banner. In our second hour, I mentioned that we're going to be talking to Hans Breitenmoser. We'll talk to him at 7:30 about the Farm Bill and the things that Senate Democrats want in, the things that House Republicans want in, and what that says for the potential future of getting some key legislation passed for the rural economy. Another story out of rural Wisconsin that caught our eye that we're going to share in our next hour deals with, frankly, gullibility and stereotypes, and a story that is not going to make parts of rural America or rural Wisconsin look good as they buy into the big lie from Donald Trump. It's a modern day snake oil salesman routine that folks are buying into in terms of believing that, there was something untoward about the 2020 election, to the point where in one Rusk County community, they got rid of their voting machines, and that could get them in a little bit of trouble legally. We'll explain in our second hour. Today's history lesson is coming up next. You're Up North.
She seemed impossible to fail.
That saxophone you hear on David Bowie's Young Americans is David Sanborn. David Sanborn passed away at the age of 78 on Sunday from prostate cancer, a multi-year battle against it. Sanborn won 6 Grammys over his career. He was written up in the New York Times as having a fiery alto saxophone whose flourishes earned him those 6 Grammys, 8 gold albums, a platinum album, and established himself as a celebrity sideman, lending indelible solos to enduring rock classics like this one from David Sanborn. Seems to be a day for saxophonists. In today's history lesson earlier, we played Jay Beckenstein, who turns 73 today, one of the co-founders of Spirogyra. Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg is 40 years old today, and retired Green Bay Packer Clay Matthews is 38 years old today. Today, we also mark the birthday of Walden Robert Casado, born in East Harlem, went into music, and became known by his stage name Bobby Darin, born this day in 1936.
Oh, the shark, babe, has such teeth, dear, and it shows them pearly white.
Yet another case of what they might have done had they had a little bit more time. Bobby Darin had health issues throughout his life and passed away at the age of 37 in 1973. On this day in 2011, country singers Blake Shelton and Miranda Lambert got married, forming a country music power couple, it says here, to rival the Tim McGraw-Faith Hill union. Except that Blake Shelton and Miranda Lambert only lasted 4 years before getting divorced. And Blake Shelton is, I believe he's still with Gwen Stefani. From
they have a child. They have a child.
Yeah, well.
It also makes it sound like wrestling, like Shelton Lambert versus McGraw and Hill this weekend at the Forum.
Yeah, I would not bet against McGraw and Faith Hill, especially after watching them in the Yellowstone series. That's a rough series, man. That's a rough series. Happy birthday to David Byrne, 72 years old today. A few Talking Heads tunes we could just play for the rest of the morning if we could. On this day in 1948, Israel is declared to be an independent state. A provisional government is established, and Israel is immediately attacked by its neighboring Arab states, triggering the 1948 Arab-Israeli War. Happy birthday to Canadian singer Tom Cochrane, who turns 71 years old today. As he gets set to sing us Life is a Highway, we'll tell you singer Shanice is 51. We'll play her hit a little bit later on today. On this day in 1953, It began at the Milwaukee brewery strike. It was a strike action involving more than 7,000 workers at Milwaukee's 6 major breweries at the time. Brewery Workers Union Local 9 and an employers organization representing the brewers failed to agree to new contracts that would have increased wages and decreased working hours to make them more comparable to the labor contracts of brewery workers elsewhere in the country. The strike lasted until late July, when Blatz broke with the other breweries and began negotiating with the union. The other companies soon followed suit, and the strike officially ended July 29th, with the union workers voting to accept new contracts that addressed many of their initial concerns. Oh, Greg, you're not going to believe what I just did on the National Day calendar for today here.
Did you accidentally delete them all?
No. I accidentally didn't finish it. Here's why. There's a story. Today is National Buttermilk Biscuit Day. That's not what the story is about. This is also Chicken Dance Day, which we have. If you have it there, we're contractually obligated to play the little chicken dance for whatever reason.
Well, that's enough of that.
No, we
fun fact about
rule.
Okay.
Yes.
Fun fact about Greg and Bridget Bach, me and my wonderful wife of nearly 12 years. We banned this song from our wedding.
Well, that's very similar to my story. I was starting the list. I got to the chicken dance. I stopped typing to go tell Sherry that, it was going to be Chicken Dance Day. The little dance itself was, for some reason, had really caught on in 1985-86. And I don't know if who popularized it or whatever it was. We had a polka band at our wedding reception. Full-on polka band, not a cover band. It was a polka band. It was all polkas out there in Manitowoc County. And we danced every song at our reception. We had a blast.
Nice.
Our faces hurt from smiling. There was only one song where we did not dance, and that's when we went to go cut the cake for everybody. And we had decided when the band fired up the little chicken dance, like, nope, we're out. So while everybody was wiggling their hips and, flapping their arms, we were like, nope, it's time to cut the cake. That's it.
Yeah.
So
I've never respected you and Dr. Kreitlow more now. Also, by the way, I'm watching this video that comes with the dance, and it's of ducks.
Yeah, I don't get that. I got immediately distracted, and so now I have to come back to the National Day Calendar website to tell you that this is International Chihuahua Appreciation Day. To which
I don't have to.
I don't have to. And what pops into my head immediately? Yo quiero Taco Bell. I just can't get that. That'll always be part of the Chihuahua thing.
The best representation of the Mexican people. Good God.
Yikes.
Oh my God.
Today is National Decency Day. Today is National Om Day for people who meditate.
Or like voltages.
This is National Underground America Day for people who like to have underground homes or homes that are partially underground.
Nice.
It's Online Romance Day, which I know is more and more of a thing as more people meet through dating apps and things like that. So, that's very nice. And let's see, it's a Spinal Cord Injury Awareness Day, and it says it is Doodah Day. It has something to do apparently with pet parades. Yeah. Doesn't have much more than that. So happy Doodah Day. Boy,
I guess.
That
Happy
segment
Doodah
really
Day
ended with a thud, didn't it?
Yeah, right. It's National Free Car Day, everybody. Go to your local car dealership and tell them Greg sent you. They get a free car.
More in our next hour here up north.
all across Wisconsin from Civic Media. This is Up North News Radio. Now, live from our Lake Minnesota studio, here's the founding editor of Up North News, Pat Brightlow.
Hey, welcome back to Up North News Radio. It's 7:06 on this Tuesday morning, May 14th, 2024. Nice to have you here live from Lake Minnesota across the Civic Media Radio Network. Coming up this hour, Senate Democrats recently released their list of priorities for a new farm bill, something still overdue and still essential for farmers and processors, consumers, the environment, the rural economy. This bill is done once every 5 years. It has to get done. So Senate Democrats have their list of priorities. We've already seen the list of House Republican priorities, and they don't seem to line up really well. And we'll get into the details of it with our friend dairy farmer Hans Breitenmoser coming up a little later this hour. We will also talk to Chad Holmes from Bull Falls Radio, whose show follows this one in the Wausau area, or you can catch it on the Civic Media app, which you can also use to listen to any stations around the Civic Media Radio Network, the local talk stations, the music stations, and more. Head to civicmedia.us to learn more about the app and the stations. But you can reach us here at this show right here this morning when you're ready, 855-75-CIVIC, 855-75-CIVIC. You can also send us a text through that number, or you can use the Civic Media app to reach us as well. Of course, Up North News is a separate entity from Civic Media, but again, so happy to be a part of the Civic Media family for these 2 hours every morning. But in the Up North News daily newsletter that Christina Laurie puts together, this morning's edition reminds you that there are at least 780 shipwrecks in Wisconsin's waters of the Great Lakes. At least 84 are preserved on the National Register of Historic Places, with more being added every year, so learn more about that. And in our news section of the newsletter, the grim reality of abortion bans in other states, and whether that's going to be part of the reality in Wisconsin or perhaps nationwide, coming up after this November's presidential election. Learn more by signing up at our newsletter. Go to upnorthnewswi.com, click on newsletter in the top banner, and become our latest daily subscriber. Let's see, we've got one weather note. It's from Rob, who says, good morning from Tigerton. It's sunny and 43, busy on his mowing jobs in Tigerton yesterday. And with the smoke that we had yesterday from the Canadian wildfires, it tires you out. Amen, Rob, that it does. Going to be better today with less smoky conditions, he says. He too enjoys polka bands at wedding dances. He loves the chicken dance and the Flying Dutchman. Well, Rob, it's been nice having you along on the radio program here.
Tigerton is dead to me.
Greg Bach
I'm
is
just kidding,
is
Rob.
done.
We love you.
We do very much. The chicken dance is not for everybody. Brittany Merlot, we'll see if we can catch up with her later on and get her forecast. And for folks who were wondering if we were serious when Sherry and I talked about having a polka band, yeah, we absolutely did. And ours is still, I mean, we went to, I don't know how many weddings as kids, her in Manitowoc County, me around the Twin Cities, but coming from a family with Polish ancestry, it was, polka bands were kind of ubiquitous with weddings, but ours in 1986 was still the last one that we've been at that had just a full polka band there, not a band that played polkas or a DJ or something like that. But I imagine that some of these bands that I see at Oktoberfest here in Chippewa Falls and others are still playing weddings. I just haven't been to one. Greg, I don't know if you see any down in your corner of the state.
No, we don't. It's. I would say if it was a polka band at a wedding down by me, it's a guy with a very well manicured mustache and a hard opinions on craft beer. So, but the question I have is, was there ever was it a conscious, not a conscious choice, but like first choice, you're like, we gotta have a polka band, or did you feel pressure from other people to have a polka band?
I wouldn't call it pressure. I would say that that Sherry's parents, Betty and Billy Fritch in Manitowoc County, they are
Oh my
avid dancers.
God, Betty and Billy.
Betty and Billy are avid polka dancers to this day.
Yeah.
They were much like my grandparents when they grew up, and my great grandparents in South Dakota, where they were farmers. There were barn dances. And
Yeah.
I've mentioned before that, those barn dances around South Dakota, one of the bands was led by a guy named Lawrence Welk, who later went on to the big time. And
Oh, he loved the bubbles.
yes. And so there's still plenty of, polka dancing to be had. There was the Big Joe Polka Show, which was followed by the Molly B, polka show that, was on RFD TV. And,
Yeah.
we've met Molly B. Anyway, it's all still out there. So Betty and Billy were, of course, paying for the lion's share of the wedding, meaning they paid for all of the wedding. God bless them. And they said, well, we're paying for the wedding. We love, polka music. They go to dances and we want to have a polka band. And they were expecting pushback, like, oh, we'd really like a DJ. We want to hear, 80s hair bands and stuff. Sherry and I both were like, great. Love it. It was a great band. We had a great time. There was absolutely it was their request. And I wouldn't even say demand, because we were just so easily happy to go along with that.
Was there any like pre-recorded music? Like, did you
No.
get to hear any, or did the polka band cover modern music? Like, here's that new song, Betty Davis Eyes.
No. I'd say the little chicken dance was as modern as they got. Seriously, it was all polkas and waltzes and schottisches and things like that. So it was adorable. It was in we got married in Whitelaw. There was a dance hall in Brillion. I can't remember what the name of it is now, but it was such an old-fashioned classic, rural Wisconsin wedding, little church on a hot summer day where we sent the kids across the street to the little general store to get a box of popsicles because it was 96 degrees and everybody was dying. So we had them go around with popsicles. And by the way, don't drip these on your nice dresses. I'm happy to say there were no disasters, but people really needed relief from the heat. So yeah, worked out really well. We were very happy with that.
Was it the Crystal Ballroom?
That might be the name now. It was called, was it called Michael's?
Oh,
I think it might've been, I forget. And of course, roasted chicken,
of course you have a roasted chicken.
Course.
It's a wedding. What kind of animals are we?
Exactly. So no,
With a fine steamed vegetable.
Mm-hmm. Roger chimes in on Facebook. When my grandparents on his mother's side had their 50th wedding anniversary in 1979, they had a polka band. 10 years later, for their 60th, they had a disc jockey. The horrors.
We're not having a polka band this time, dear. I want to get down. I want to shake my booty. Live with that nightmare, boy.
Oh, Roger, thank you for chiming in with that. We appreciate it. It is 7:14 right now. I want to talk for a bit about gullibility and stereotypes. Stereotypes are an unfortunate part of life. While there are good people and bad people in any given population, unfortunately, there always seems to be a subset of the population that makes it hard for everybody else to avoid being painted with a broad brush. And you can put in all kinds of names of groups to see what I'm talking about. You can talk about people who really need, for example, assistance getting on their feet. But all it takes is one person to be, an abuser of welfare, and suddenly everybody is painted with a broad brush. You could say that about, an urban population, and you can definitely say it about a rural population. That's the point I'm going to be making here, because those of us who work hard to be advocates for rural Wisconsin occasionally have to deal with the challenge of certain rural leaders who reinforce the stereotypes offered up that they are easily misinformed or sometimes callous or worse. The stereotype goes back a long ways when folks were easily flim-flammed by snake oil salesmen. I mean, folks would swear that the magical concoction was fixing all of their ills, even while they were being duped. And that takes me to Rusk County and a story by Molly Beck of the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel coming out of the town of Thornapple. that has fallen for a modern-day snake oil campaign. And as a result, the town leaders there took the unusual step of going against voter access and privacy because they suddenly fear those mysterious computers that are used in voting machines. The decision was apparently made in June of last year, according to town supervisor Tom Zelm. Around the time there was discussion in the local newspaper, Molly Beck writes, over whether to abandon electronic voting machines amid a visit to the area by one of the nation's most prominent purveyors of election conspiracy theories. And so when they eventually did make that move to get rid of the voting machines, Rusk County Democratic Party Chair Aaron Webster recorded a telephone conversation on April 2nd with Town Supervisor Jack Zupan that was then posted to YouTube, where Zupan tells Webster that the board voted to remove the machines, quote, because we believe there was a stolen election and the computers have to go because they're full of error. Zupan did not return multiple phone calls from the Journal-Sentinel over several days to discuss the contents of the recording. But he said, quote, there are court cases right now that show anybody can hack and manipulate that voting machine within just a matter of a couple of minutes. We want your vote to count, not to be taken away. At one point, it's claimed during the call, Webster said the board was absolutely breaking the law, and Zupan replied, quote, I couldn't possibly do worse than what Biden does. And there it is, right there. That again, in putting party before country, ideology before country, you are willing to let yourself be fooled, duped, made a fool, and eliminating the voting machines, of which there has to be at least one, so that folks with disabilities can vote in privacy and not have to tell somebody what to put on their ballot. They claimed in the town later in the article that they haven't noticed any problem about that. You know, much like for years how people said, I don't see any need for civil rights. We don't see any problem with people not being able to vote, because you see what you want to see when you hear what you want to hear, rather than listening to facts and maybe listening to your heart and working toward the common good. We'll have more coming up, including our visit with Hans Breitenmoser on the rural economy and the Farm Bill, coming up along the way. Here on Up North News Radio, brought to you by Courier Newsroom and distributed here on the Civic Media Radio Network, live from Lake Wissota. I'm Pat Kreitlow. We'll be right back. Happy birthday to Shanice Wilson. She was born in Pittsburgh. She's 51 years old today, and that was her big hit, I Love Your Smile. Reminder, you can join the conversation here at 855-75-CIVIC. We'd love to have you join us with any of the topics that we're talking about, or try to change gears and let us know what else is on your mind, news-wise, or things going on around Wisconsin. The Milwaukee Brewers lost to the Pittsburgh Pirates last night 8-6, but there was plenty of excitement along the way, at least in the eighth inning. Pittsburgh had been up 5-0, and then in the eighth inning they were up 7-2 when the Brewers almost came all the way back. Jake Bauers in the bottom of the eighth, with the bases loaded, delivered his first career grand slam for the Brewers to make it a 7-6 game, but Pittsburgh was able to tack on one more run and came away with that 8-6 victory. Potential bad news here. Rhys Hoskins left the game after injuring his right hamstring, running to first base during a second inning single. Manager Pat Murphy said that Hoskins will undergo an MRI later today. The Brewers have simply had issues with leaving runners on base. They left 2 on base without scoring in the second, the third, the fifth, and the sixth innings. Colin Ray got 5 strikeouts over 6 innings of work. He gave up 3 runs on 6 hits and 1 walk. Joe Ross will get the start for the Brewers this evening. Pre-game starting at 6:05 on stations belonging to Civic Media in Richland Center, Racine, Kenosha, Oshkosh, and Park Falls. And then the 2 teams will wrap up the series with a game starting over the noon hour tomorrow. There's going to be a change in the Green Bay Packers participation in a charity football game rather, that they do each year. Packers legend and longtime host Donald Driver announced Friday that this year's softball game will be his last. He is handing over the hosting duties to quarterback Jordan Love. And this version of the story I'm reading from WLUK TV. Let's see, Driver said in a news conference that it started with Brett, and then after Brett Favre retired, he gave it to me. I passed it on to the great Jordy Nelson, and then Jordy passed it back to me, and we continued, and now it's off to be in the capable hands of Jordan Love. Funds raised by the Green Bay charity softball game benefit local nonprofits, as well as those run by Packer players. Love introduced his new venture, the Hands of Love Foundation, which he said will work to inspire youth to participate in sports, support the law enforcement community, and bring awareness to mental health and suicide issues. All of those issues hit home for Love. His father was a police officer who committed suicide when Love was 14 years old. And with it being Mother's Day weekend back Friday, the pregame tailgate party featured flowers, chocolate, massages for mothers, face painting, a bouncy house, and other activities and games for the kids. So congratulations to Jordan Love, and many thanks to Donald Driver for his work all those years in helping make sure that that charity game could continue to go on and serve charities all around the area. There was a groundbreaking ceremony yesterday by Senator Tammy Baldwin and State Department of Transportation Secretary Craig Thompson, breaking ground on the new Wisconsin River Bridge project in Columbia County for Interstate 9094. Those bridges have been around for 60 years. They carry 60,000 vehicles a day. It is part of what is now tens of thousands of improvements going on around the country from the bipartisan infrastructure law. Tammy Baldwin secured $80 million to help replace the bridge, combined with state dollars to remove the original structures and put up the 2 new bridge spans. Meanwhile, I had noticed throughout the weekend that Eric Hovde was running a pretty healthy dose of political ads during the Brewers games, and obviously they're sure to be running on other stations as well. And I've continued to notice this emphasis on the border and on fentanyl, which I think is I think it's odd because, again, not everybody's paying attention to every news story every time. But it seems an odd choice for Hovde because of things that Tammy Baldwin has done and, frankly, the things that Hovde has been talking about for years. Nobody should fool themselves into thinking that Eric Hovde got into this race over issues about the border or fentanyl. He has for years talked mostly about taxes and cutting taxes for corporations and for the very wealthy. And if he has to scare people about other people at the border to try to win his race and then cut his own taxes, well, that's what Eric Hovde is going to do. But more importantly, his whole party has shown they don't want to fix the border. They don't want a more secure border. They don't want to fix immigration. At Donald Trump's instructions, they killed the best possible bipartisan bill to fix these important issues. Remember, Trump had a Republican House and a Republican Senate in 2017. And they did not reform immigration. They tried to set aside some money for a border wall, or shall we say, borrow money from other parts of the budget, especially the military, to build a wall, but didn't actually reform immigration or border security. What did they accomplish in 2017? The one thing they accomplished was cutting taxes for corporations and the wealthy. And by the way, one note about that, because this comes up as well, and Trump mentioned it in his New Jersey rally last weekend. He talked about the coming Biden tax increase. Let's explain what that is for a moment, shall we? In 2017, when Republicans passed their tax cut bill, to make the numbers look good, they had to fudge with the 10-year numbers, because they base these things on what does any given bill do after 10 years? What's the impact on the budget? So what they did was they repealed some of the tax breaks after 9 years or so, and then the taxes all jump back up. Well, not all of the taxes, not the ones for the wealthy, not the ones for corporations, but the tax breaks that had gone to the middle class have been becoming less and less generous year after year. Folks are noticing that, and that's why taxes are slated to go up a lot more for the middle class over the next couple of years. Trump framing that as a Biden tax hike, when that's actually what Republicans baked into the tax bill, the one that blew a $2 trillion hole in the deficit. And if they get back into power to pay for more tax cuts, they're willing to slash retirement benefits. They're willing to slash farm programs, as we'll discuss coming up shortly here with Hans Breitenmoser. Or they will cut taxes again for a certain period. But again, that just deprives the federal government of the funds that are needed for things like repairing bridges that are deteriorating after 60 years. Very briefly on the Donald Trump trial yesterday. Again, we know that the attorney Michael Cohen, who had been Trump's fixer, quote unquote, was testifying yesterday about helping process the payoff to adult film star Stormy Daniels to not talk about their alleged affair with Trump in 2006. Trump, according to Cohen, was he was very attentive about quashing that story because the Access Hollywood tape had recently come out. And Trump was worried about the boasts by Trump about grabbing women. Cohen says that Trump told him, "Women are going to hate me. Guys may think it's cool, but this is going to be a disaster for the campaign." If there are any guys who thought that was cool, you've got far more issues with your manliness than simply saying, well, I vote for Donald Trump because, I'm a man. And those are issues you really, really need to consider addressing. Hans Breitenmoser is next. You're up north. Hans, how are we doing?
Good morning, Pat. I'm well. How are you?
I am good too. So, all right, you're there. I'm going to tuck you back in the waiting room during this long break. We'll see you on the other side.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you.
Welcome back to Up North News Radio on this Tuesday morning. It's May 14th. It is nice to have you along here as well as we carry on with yet another morning here where we're going to reach out and talk to our friend Hans Breitenmoser in just a moment. Wanted to know we were playing Keith Urban there just because it was on this day in 2020 that he became the first major artist to play a drive-in concert because of the coronavirus pandemic. He played to an audience of healthcare workers at a drive-in movie theater in Watertown, Tennessee. Recall that 4 years ago, we were starting to cover the first graduation ceremonies that were being held in drive-in theaters as well to try to maintain our distance from each other and try to get through the pandemic together. Let's see. The U.S. Department of Agriculture has its latest Wisconsin Ag News and Crop Progress Report out. Corn planting is about 40% complete. Soybean planting is just about 40% complete. Oats, nearly 70% complete. 80% of potato acreage has been planted. All of that a few days ahead of last year. Spring tillage is at 70%, and the winter wheat condition rated 85%, good to excellent statewide. We do all that just as a barometer, a competition, a measuring stick, so we can see how Hans Breitenmoser is doing up in Lincoln County, if he's slacking off or if he's keeping up with the rest of the class. Hans, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. And I feel like I should just hang up right now and get back out there because I'm way behind according to your statistics there. I need to bump it up a notch.
Well, remember that is a statewide average, and your conditions may vary. And for all the talk of drought last year and heading into throughout this winter, soil moisture has not been an issue. In fact, if anything, maybe it's been an impediment in some places. But how are things in Lincoln County these days?
Not too bad. The rain has slowed us down a little bit. On Sunday, we were out there and again, got a shot of rain that shut us down. But we did finally get some corn in the ground last night. And I have every confidence, barring any major breakdowns, we'll get some more corn in the ground today. So
very good. All right. Well, thanks for taking a couple of minutes with us as we do every other week to talk about matters that affect the rural economy and other state matters as well. And I was motivated for this week's session by seeing a note from Senator Tammy Baldwin's office indicating that Democrats who control the U.S. Senate have put together their package of what they call their framework for the upcoming reauthorization of the Farm Bill. Now, I'm sure folks have heard this quite a bit, but just to as a refresher, the Farm Bill is a major package of legislation. It's not an annual thing. It's renewed every 5 years. It affects everything from school lunches to food assistance to market rules to environmental programs. There are provisions about rural economic development, American food exports, food research, food safety. And because it is not just a farm bill, it's about cities, it's about markets. Because of its size and its scope, it is designed to encourage bipartisanship and cooperation from both rural and urban lawmakers. In other words, hey, you knuckleheads, set the partisan politics aside and do what's right for all of these various constituencies. And Senator Baldwin outlining what Democrats want to see in the Farm Bill. You see a lot here that helps with things like the Dairy Business Innovation Act, connecting farmers with mental health resources, upgrading critical water infrastructure, protecting American farmland from foreign investment. And then when I looked, and we've talked about this earlier, Hans, about what Republicans who control the House of Representatives have been proposing, what I'm seeing is just a lot of budget cuts, cutting money that would go toward some of these programs that farmers rely on. So, Hans, having seen what Senate Democrats have now put forward and what we've heard earlier from House Republicans, what's your sense of where things stand in terms of, is there a Venn diagram here, or are we talking two separate circles of what Democrats and Republicans want in this Farm Bill?
boy, they seem pretty far apart. It's always good to see senators like Tammy Baldwin reaching across the aisle and working with, her Senate colleagues on the other side. But yeah, as far as the politics in Washington go and what's going on in the House, it is unusual. But I think you're absolutely right, Pat. It's not unusual. It is usual. That's the problem. But one thing that you mentioned earlier, as far as the bigness and the importance of the Farm Bill, it is interesting that it's one of those things that happens in Washington that most people don't realize or understand or hear much about or so forth. But it's one of those things that has a real impact on so many people around the country. It touches almost everyone's life in one way or the other.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, you don't want to see a reduction, say, in meat inspection. We have a food supply here that is overwhelmingly safe. We still pay less out of our annual income than almost anybody else in the world for the food that we eat. But that's only because of all of these decisions that have been made earlier on a bipartisan basis. Hans, your parents emigrated here and started farming in Wisconsin, right?
That is correct. They moved here in 1968.
Okay, so I wondered how you read into this. One of the topics that comes up, we hear about immigration all the time and border security and all of that. This one's a bit more economic. This topic of, quote, protecting American farmland from foreign investment. Because we don't want people to get confused that there wouldn't be opportunities for people to, emigrate to America and begin farming. But there's a difference between that versus foreign entities that are basically purchasing farmland and then have that under their control, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's all together apples and oranges. My parents came here in 1968 when it was easier to emigrate to the United States. There's still plenty of farmers in places like Holland that would like to move here, and they're moving to Canada instead. So it is difficult to get in here from an immigration standpoint. And that's unfortunate. But as far as owning the land, this concern about foreign ownership of land, that has to do and should have to do with large multinational companies, vertically integrated operations that have taken over segments of ag or are attempting to, not only buying farmland, but some of the the really large meat packers and hog producers are Chinese owned and owned by other companies in other countries. So that should concern us a little bit, as far as where our food is produced, who's in control of the resources that are producing it. That's something that we should be concerned about for sure.
Yeah, for example, and I would have never known this had it not been for the pandemic, when the meatpacking industry was going through a crisis, and it's when we learned that Smithfield Foods, one of the big pork producers, is a wholly owned subsidiary of a Chinese-owned conglomerate. It's far from what it was in 1936 when Joseph W. Smithfield got the company started. And these are things that, elected officials need to be mindful of.
Yeah, I don't think Joseph W. Smith would recognize what has happened to the company that is his namesake. But this speaks to the larger issue of vertical integration. It speaks to antitrust legislation. The bigness of ag goes hand in hand with the more and more foreign ownership of ag. And that's something that our legislators should be concerned about, regardless if they're Democrats or Republicans.
Which unfortunately gets us to this point now of what we have typically been hearing about Republican policy. And this is nothing new here. It's just that the mantra is always deregulation, deregulation, deregulation. And Hans, of course, I've said 1,000 times on this show, whenever you hear regulations, insert the word protections instead, protecting the consumer, protecting the worker, protecting the environment, and maybe you'll think differently about it, because some of these possible deregulations, have tremendous potential to have a negative impact on farming, food processing, and exports, right?
Absolutely. And again, I hate to sound like a broken record, but it goes hand in hand with the bigness. I mean, when we talk about regulating processing facilities or farms for various reasons for food safety. These are, well-intentioned oftentimes ideas, but the risk that we don't seem to be worried about, or public policy doesn't seem to be worried about, is having that many pigs or that many chickens or that many cows in one spot. That really puts our food system in a precarious balance, because now you're talking about, recalls that impact tens of thousands, if not millions of people who buy all their food, all across the country at all the Walmarts hither and yon.
The cuts that House Republicans have talked about, some of them are rather blatant, and we've talked about those in the past. That there has been calls to cut $50 billion from programs that help farmers and ranchers take part in two very popular voluntary conservation projects, the Conservation Stewardship Program and the Environmental Quality Incentives Program. We've talked about that, but what's been coming to light more recently, Hans, is that all of the general budget cuts that House Republicans are calling on could do damage. And U.S. Ag Secretary Tom Vilsack pointed out that of the House Agriculture Committee's 29 Republicans, 21 of them are part of a Republican study committee whose proposed budget would again lead to massive cuts in programs that benefit farmers. And as I look up what one of those House Agriculture Committee members, Republican Derek Van Orden, has going for him, it includes supporting things that would cut a great deal of resources that would go to Wisconsin farmers.
And it's just so short-sighted and so dumb, Pat. It really is, because these programs through NRCS and so forth, and oftentimes the NRCS, which is federal, cooperates with state and local initiatives to do things that have a really positive impact on groundwater and surface water, and going forward, talking about carbon sequestration. So to sort of cut these things off, I just don't understand the logic. These are programs that farmers need in order to help them do the right thing, purely from a financial standpoint, but also from a technical standpoint. A lot of the technical assistance that we get is coming through these programs, and that's stuff that would go away, and that doesn't benefit anybody. It doesn't benefit the consumers, but it sure as hell doesn't benefit the environment either.
No, and rather than cutting these essential programs, there are others who are choosing to invest in farming. And again, from Senator Baldwin fairly recently, a new round of energy efficiency improvement grants, more than $1 million worth for Wisconsin entities. I'm just going to grab a couple of them randomly. There's a farm in Durand that is getting nearly $100,000 to install a more energy efficient grain dryer. That's going to save the company more than $5,000 a year in electrical costs. The same goes for a farm nearby here in Bloomer. There's a small business in Phillips that's going to install a solar electric array. That leads to creating jobs. It's these energy investments through the Inflation Reduction Act and the bipartisan infrastructure law, Hans, that seems to be where the real economic development is happening across rural Wisconsin these days.
Absolutely. And it's really exciting. Now, I may be slightly biased. I've got some solar panels on my barns, and I've been interested in energy efficiency for my entire career. But I think it's really just dollars very, very well spent. They get out into the rural areas. They get put close to the ground where they're going to grow, and they're doing good things for the environment and for these local economies. So I just it's really wise investments that we're talking about here, Pat.
It really is about who's bringing your tax money back home to your district. And that's what's happening in rural Wisconsin, in rural America, despite their more recent voting patterns. It's why folks really ought to take a look at who's looking out for them in our state and federal capitals. Hans Breitenmoser, thanks for helping us draw a pretty clear line on the answer to that question. Appreciate it so much. Good luck with all the rest of the planting, and we'll talk to you again in a couple of weeks.
Thanks a lot, Pat. And if you get bored, we'll have some stones to pick for you.
There's always picking rock, always. Thank you, sir. When we come back, Chad Holmes will tell us what's coming up on his show on Bull Falls Radio next. You're Up North.
And it slips away. Oh, yes, it does. We talk about forever, but we've only got today.
All right, we're clear. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it very much.
Thanks a lot, Pat. Take care.
All right, see you later.
Bye.
Hey there. Chad Holmes is here from Bull Falls Radio. His show is coming up next in the Wausau area, or you can catch it over the Civic Media app through the website and more. Mr. Holmes, how are you?
Good morning, Pat. Doing very well.
Good. Hey, this just in from the office of Governor Tony Evers, and I've got to say there's a bit of a surprise here. Two special elections. One not a surprise, one definitely a surprise. The one that's not a surprise is in a state Senate district in the Milwaukee area, the 4th Senate District. It is vacant due to the resignation of my friend and former colleague, State Senator Lena Taylor, after she was appointed a judge to the Milwaukee County Circuit Court. So I get that one. Now let's go to the 8th Congressional District in Northeast Wisconsin. You'll recall that Congressman Mike Gallagher resigned rather abruptly and rather deliberately by waiting until mid-April. The seat essentially stays open until somebody is elected in November who would start serving in January. Governor Evers this morning called a special election for the 8th District to be held on that same November election day so that whoever wins that special election will represent the district from November to January. So the same person could win both elections or not. One person could serve as a congressional representative for about 2 months, and then the other person who won takes over as the permanent congressperson. It's rather unusual, Chad, but I would say it sends a message from Governor Evers that districts deserve representation, even if it's for a couple of months and he can't make it happen any earlier. But if that's what he can do, that's what he's going to do. I don't think everybody will agree with it, but I think that's the point he's trying to make.
I don't see why anybody would be against this because, yes, like you say, there's that possibility in these days that people would decide. I would hope that people aren't that silly. Well, I'm going to vote for this person and this for the 2-month election, and then for the 2-year election, we're going to vote for this person. You're exactly right. We stop playing games with our representation, and again, I haven't heard specifically why Mike Gallagher did it this way. I mean, there have been theories on why he's done it this way. I don't know if I'm mistaken in terms of, there was some nefarious reason that Gallagher decided to, kind of take it to his own party there. But no, I think what the governor's doing, this is not everything is a political stunt. This sounds like, hey, we want to have somebody that's serving for those 2 months. And frankly, after in the post-election period, who knows what's going to happen? I mean, obviously, that could be a very significant time between November and January.
That is an excellent point. That is when, for example, Republicans in the legislature engaged in their lame duck chicanery. Where's my old man Bell? In, fixing the powers of the governor and the attorney general to be, less effective than they were when, Republicans were in charge. So that is an excellent point about getting people in there during the interregnum, shall we say, between, the sessions that are out there. But when you talk about political stunts, you got to talk about what's happening in Madison today with state Senate Republicans gathering not to release the $125 million that they've already budgeted for PFAS contamination. No. We're going to leave the water dirty. We're going to leave the water contaminated and dangerous, but we're going to hold a symbolic veto override vote, even though they don't have the votes in the assembly to do it. It is it's a clown show, Chad, is what it is.
It's, again, just performance art.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been thinking, I've been trying to take time when I'm driving, when I'm going off to, I went to River Falls on Saturday for some baseball broadcasts. I've been trying to think about, some areas that perhaps are causing some of these issues where you have, for lack of a better term, clowns in some positions. The Marjorie Taylor Greene caucus of the American governmental system at this point. And there is just so much performance art. And I just think it goes back to these and again, maybe I was thinking, sort of outside the box. We live in an era where we have what are called reality shows that are not reality shows.
Right.
We have a guy that was a host of a reality show that became the president of the United States, and yet we still have these phony reality shows that are not real, but they call them reality. And I think too much of that mentality is seeping into the minds of too many people, and where the idea of performance art is the equivalent of actually getting things done. And I was talking yesterday on my show because over the weekend I saw Ron Johnson doing his right-wing media tour again. I have no idea why the people at Fox News Sunday feel like Ron Johnson is an important voice to be heard on a regular basis. But basically, I've talked about the fact that we got a workhorse and a show horse that is in the United States Senate.
Mm-hmm.
You got somebody like Tammy Baldwin, who you mentioned earlier, talking about, bringing back funds from the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act, actually doing things for people in the state. And then you got Ron Johnson, who thinks the job of a United States Senator is to appear on right-wing media sources all the time. That's the only thing I see him doing. I don't see him doing anything. When's the last time that you heard Ron Johnson, other than, spouting off with his theories on COVID or talking about, all this other craziness, who's actually got into the trenches and started working hard? We are in such a time here where you see the clown show aspect and the performance art. I'm trying to figure out why we're there and what we can do to kind of get out of this cycle of where you think that performing is the equivalent of actually doing the job.
The last I can tell is of course, the 2017 Trump tax cut bill, where he lobbied for, a break that benefited him personally and benefited, his billionaire donors. And beyond that, he has been rather outspoken that, it's not government's job to pass bills.
When you say that, maybe Ron was right. Maybe doing nothing is better, because when he did something, it was not a good thing. But again, it shows who you're serving. And I heard a story on the news at the top of the hour, last hour, talking about so many people that think that Republicans' policies are doing more for average working people than the Democrats. Number one, I would like to know what these policies are, because we just don't see them they aren't running on policy. They're running on.
It's not a policy, Chad. It's a vibe. It's a vibe. They have a vibe.
Oh, the vibe.
It's the vibe is like the algorithm. It cannot be defeated. It can only be adhered to.
Oh man, so that's not a good way to finish it. I'll talk about vibes.
I know. I'm handing the vibe off to you to take it from here on your show from 8 to 10 on Bull Falls Radio. Chad, thank you so much.
You bet, Pat.
Appreciate it. Greg will be along next at 10 a.m. right on Matt and Air on Air. It's all about the vibes there too.
Not next, but soon.
Well, yeah, after Chad. Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it so much. Glad to have all of you here as well. Up North News is the Wisconsin digital outlet for Courier, a pro-democracy news network building a more informed, engaged, and representative America. You can follow us on social media. Sign up for our newsletter at upnorthnewswi.com. Thanks for being here. Have a wonderful Tuesday. We'll see you tomorrow back here up north.